Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Jordan Chariton here. Jordan Chariton here. Let's see if. All right, we got two viewers. We got two viewers. We just had some technical issues. Very interesting that we had these technical issues when I get Tim Canova. When I get Tim Canova an interview, all of a sudden YouTube doesn't work. Isn't that interesting, folks? So I'll wait a minute to get people back before. Hey, folks who are texting me, stop texting me while I'm live. Thank you. Um, we had Tim Canova live, and then YouTube goes bust. So it's okay. We'll wait. We'll wait a couple more minutes. I'm gonna call Tim back. Ooh, and he was just getting going before we had to go. So hopefully there's no buffering issues this time. Tim was just speaking to me about the race down there, which he thinks was rigged. Frankly, I agree with him because I don't really know how he could only get 5 votes, 5 percentage points when he only lost by 12 percentage points last time. And in the last race, it was a known fact that there was paper ballots being tossed out. So press the share button. Let's get this out to as many people as possible so that we could get Tim's message out to as many people as possible. I'm doing things on the fly here, so work with me. Here we go. Hold on one second. Do 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 do. What will be will be. All right. So I'm calling Tim back now. Press the share button so we can get it out to as many people as possible. Here we go.
Hello.
Sorry about that, Tim. We're good now.
Okay, so
So
so do we start from the beginning or what?
Well, you were saying basically that you think there was rigging that went on because obviously it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense that you did perform pretty well in 2016. Obviously, there's known paper ballot destruction that went on, which is against the law. And then all of a sudden, you only get 5 percentage points. Where we left off is you were saying, most people say lose gracefully, this and that, but you're choosing to speak out because to you, the election is a sham.
Well, I think our entire election system is pretty flawed, and people who want to pretend otherwise are really deluded. There's a lot of name calling here. If you try to question the integrity of an election, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist or some nonsense like that. There's a reason that every European democracy and Canada and other countries have banned electronic voting machines. They're very easy to manipulate the software and get away with it. So there's that problem. Then in our election here, we saw a video that shows a break in the chain of custody of the paper ballots. And then finally, you've got Brenda Snipes herself as the supervisor. And, forgive me for not trusting the woman. She destroyed the paper ballots for my 2016 primary while my lawsuit was pending against her. And it was a very active lawsuit. We had served her with discovery requests 3 days before she ordered the destruction of the ballots. And then she concealed the destruction from the court and from me and my lawyers for more than 2 more months. So it's a pattern of deceit and of law breaking. Mm-hmm. And, what's the motivation in destroying ballots, which are felonies under state law? I mean, these violate state and federal criminal law. What would the motivation be? So, that gets us into some of the statistical analyses. I'd recommend people to go to hollerbackfilm.com, and you'll see the graphs that were made on cumulative vote tallies in our 2016 race. People can see for themselves. I don't have any ulterior motive in criticizing the voting system. I've gotten to the point after 2 runs now, using a lot of personal resources and building great grassroots campaigns, that it just doesn't seem like it makes sense for progressives to try to be running if there is any kind of a prospect, any kind of a chance of manipulation of software.
And can you paint a picture? Because in the final days of the campaign, I mean, you were tweeting and Facebooking like a madman. It seemed like there was a lot of energy on the ground. It seemed like you cited a poll that came out from a Republican source, but that it wasn't such a far distance between you and Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
No, in fact, the report that came out by the Floridian Press, based on whatever leaked sources they had, claimed that there was a Republican poll that had me in a dead heat, tied with Wasserman Schultz at 34% each, with the Republican back at 13%. And when that poll came out, or I should say when that report came out, at that point, Republicans started coming out of the woodworks and telling me they were voting for me. And even a lot of Democrats felt like, well, if we vote for Canova now, it's not going to split the vote. We're not going to get a Republican. So there was a lot of energy coming our way, all the early voting sites and election day sites. And, our social media was very active. It wasn't always me posting. We had a team that was posting. But it felt like a great, the campaign felt great in the final stretch. Felt like a winning campaign. And a lot of people were absolutely shocked, stunned by those kind of poll results. But it's not that stunning to me. Jordan, for months I was saying that I was calling on the governor, Rick Scott, to fire the supervisor of elections. What she did were firing offenses. I was calling for a criminal investigation, and none of that was forthcoming. It got back to me through my lawyer, who was well connected to Republican circles, that the Republicans were not interested in pursuing the ballot destruction case against the supervisor because they had the same donors that Debbie Wasserman Schultz does. So the establishment closes ranks and pulls together. And at the time, I remember saying that if Governor Scott did not remove the supervisor, he was doing it at his own peril to have her as the supervisor in the general election. And then how prophetic was that? And then secondly, I was saying that I wouldn't get a fair shake, that they would rig this election against me. So, there are a lot of unanswered questions. There are a lot of researchers who are doing research. And, we'll see where it all goes.
And as far as, what you think might have happened, do you think that there might have been stuff with the voting machines? Do you think there might have been stuff with paper ballot destruction? What are your fears? Obviously, Brenda Snipes, who, by the way, was just photographed very non-neutrally, shall we say, with Debbie Wasserman Schultz at the end of October. Obviously, we know they destroyed the ballots in 2016. What is your sense of what happened here?
Well, yes, Wasserman Schultz was photographed a week before the election campaigning openly with Brenda Snipes. Chris Hedges, I think it was, who said that the corruption has gotten so bad now that they do it right out in the open, that they don't really care. They know that they'll get away with it. I'll say that when none of the criminal law enforcement agencies decided to investigate the ballot destruction, to me that was a chilling moment. It wasn't just politics. We're talking about the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Florida Attorney General, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And to me, it was reminiscent of the Obama Justice Department refusing to bring any charges against any of the bankers that had collapsed the economy in 2008. So what does it say about the rule of law when, for average folks, if you step out of line, there could be, you might be facing a tough criminal justice system. But if you're wealthy or politically connected, apparently destroying ballots it's okay. It can be forgiven. It can be people look the other way. And then, economists refer to moral hazards. When bad behavior is not punished, it creates incentives to repeat that bad behavior. Well, what's the moral hazard of destroying ballots and getting away with it so blatantly? I suppose it emboldens people to campaign together, the supervisor of elections with, her crony, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And who knows what other wrongdoing it encouraged for this general election. I have trouble believing in the results. I don't believe in it. And most people I know who are on the ground here, Republicans or Democrats, who are at the early voting sites campaigning, they also think it's just a big joke.
And, I saw you on, I think it was MSNBC. No, it wasn't you, but a reporter was on MSNBC describing to one of the anchors that this supervisor of elections, everything she's done, destroying ballots. And it was almost like the anchor on MSNBC, it's like, wait, you're telling me that politicians are corrupt in America? You don't say. It seems like everything you've been saying for the last 2 years about this one official, but overall, I mean, that it was a rigged election in South Florida, basically to reelect Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that all of a sudden now people are starting to take notice. Some are calling you a conspiracy theorist because they don't want any questioning going on there.
Right,
But
right.
what are your thoughts on that journalist response and the overall response to this?
Well, first I'll say there's a great definition of a conspiracy theorist. It's somebody who asks questions to known liars. Um, Secondly, I'll say that there was an actual conspiracy that occurred here in regards to my 2016 ballots, a criminal conspiracy that we proved in court, that Brenda Snipes conspired with her director, Dozell Spencer, to destroy the ballots. And both of their names were on the destruction order. And then finally, that MSNBC interview was Mark Caputo, a very good reporter with Politico, who was being interviewed. And Caputo was the reporter at Politico who broke the story on the ballot destruction in the first place. And I think he came out with that story before we even had Brenda Snipes admitting to it on videotaped deposition, sworn depositions. So, people can throw whatever kinds of names they want to at me, and it's name calling. It's ad hominem argument instead of talking about the facts. And we established an awful lot of facts in the ballot destruction case. That Snipes destroyed these ballots while the lawsuit was pending. She concealed the destruction from the court, and the judge on the Florida Circuit Court agreed with us and granted a summary judgment. And in a 10-page order, he found that Snipes had committed all of these violations of federal and state criminal statutes. Mm-hmm. So when Mark Caputo talked about this on MSNBC recently, I did see a tape of it. Somebody had sent it to me. And you're right, the anchor, her jaw dropped. And, I can imagine it was genuinely kind of an epiphany for her that an elections official, a supervisor of elections, could not just destroy all of the ballots in this rather high-profile congressional race. I mean, this was not some minor race. This was perhaps the most hotly contested primary in the Democratic Party in 2016 for a congressional seat. So it's a little jaw-dropping that the supervisor destroyed the ballots. What kind of supervisor does that? And then that she got away with it, that there were no repercussions, and lo and behold, it's the same supervisor at the center of what seems to be close to deadlocked election for governor and senator in Florida.
And when you look at it through your canvassing, obviously in that district, it's generally, she's been a congressman there for, I think, over a decade. But did you see in your canvassing, more people coming over to you among African Americans, Latinos, young people? What were your expectations and what you guys were seeing as far as voter enthusiasm before that don't match the less than 5% on paper you got?
The groups that we were targeting included African Americans, Hispanics, independents, seniors. I'm trying to remember. There was another group that we were targeting. Young voters. We saw a big turnout in young voters. The numbers show a high turnout of those that were under 40, I believe, which should have been with us. I was told there was a Democratic poll that was out there, which I haven't seen. It was told to me by another candidate that had Wasserman Schultz's disapproval rating in the district at 57%. And it is somewhat telling, I think, that Wasserman Schultz, for all the money she had, and she raised millions of dollars, they didn't publish a single poll. If all the news was so good for Wasserman Schultz, you would have thought she would have just published a good poll, and they didn't do a single one of them. Now, my campaign didn't have much money, so we weren't polling. And we saw a lot of enthusiasm on the ground, and it wasn't just those demographics that we were talking about, which you could say are maybe some of the progressive demographics, like young people and Hispanics, Democratic Party Hispanics in particular. But we also got a lot of Republican support. a tremendous amount. I got endorsements. I got folks coming out of the woodwork saying they were voting for us. It just defies imagination that I went from 25,000 votes in a primary 2 years ago to this year, half that.
Right.
Either way, whatever the reality is, I don't know if we'll ever know it for either of these past two elections. I think that in itself is a bit of a statement, how difficult it is to verify a vote. I tried to verify the vote from 2016. That's why I put in the public records request to inspect the paper ballots. We were going to start in about a dozen precincts, and if they matched up, I'd say it was verified. If they didn't, we would try to inspect more precincts.
Right.
Well, they didn't even let us do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it shouldn't have to be so difficult in this country to have a transparent election and to verify the vote. And between 2016 and this one, and not just my races, I mean all those Bernie Sanders races where a dozen times the exit poll showed him winning and he ends up losing the race. And everyone's got stories to tell that just seems, well, it can be explained if you trust the system. Okay? Just trust the system and it all makes sense. After all, my election results were published in the Sun Sentinel. It must be true. It was published in the Sun Sentinel. And if that's your mindset, that you're going to just trust authority, and authority in this case is Brenda Snipes. I mean, really, you're going to trust somebody who destroys ballots and then campaigns openly with Wasserman Schultz? I'm sorry. I don't want to trust the untrustworthy. And I don't think that's the way to run a democracy.
Well, it also
faith that Santa Claus exists. We'll have faith that we have fair elections.
Well, it also seems like the Sun Sentinel down there. You know more than I, but it seems like they have pretty strong financial interests in Debbie Wasserman Schultz staying in office, and establishment Democrats. I mean, they might have not rigged the box down there, but it does seem like the media down there, more even in some cases worse than what Bernie dealt with. Seems like the Sun Sentinel down there props up this election fraud and doesn't even acknowledge it.
Well, I tend to agree with you. Their coverage of the ballot destruction case was terrible. The Miami Herald was terrible. And these are not just local papers. The Sun Sentinel is owned by Conk Corporation, based in Sacramento, the third largest newspaper chain in the country. And the Miami Herald is owned by McClatchy, the second largest newspaper chain in the country. So how much autonomy the local news desks have and the local editorial boards, I don't know. There's surveys for years that have been showing that editors and journalists around the country express that they have less and less journalistic and editorial autonomy, that these media corporations are more run as corporations, and the journalistic ethics really come in last, or they're dropped completely. And we've seen a real suffering of journalistic ethics with the Sun Sentinel, where they'll write a report without even calling me for comment. So it's a one-sided presentation of the facts, and they're usually wrong on the facts, quite frankly, on the ballot destruction case and on others. Mm-hmm. And but their presentation of the facts does mimic the press releases of Wasserman Schultz.
Right. And let me ask you, you have written an open letter to Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, basically asking for a special election for all these races that have been contested, and there's got, issues of where are the provisional ballots, where are the absentee ballots. Are you talking about Gillum versus DeSantis, Nelson versus Scott, as well as you versus Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that you'd like a new special election?
Well, what's sad is that when you express criticism now of Brenda Snipes, when I do, you get a lot of Gillum and Nelson supporters who act as if that means I must be MAGA, Make America Great, and, for Rick Scott and, DeSantis. This is not a partisan issue when you're talking about election integrity. And can you imagine what's going to happen after $100 million is paid in legal fees, and whoever wins these recounts in the governor's race and the Senate race is going to have a tough time, because half the population is going to think they won it on a stolen election. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think it necessarily serves the interests of Andrew Gillum and, Bill Nelson to stay wedded to a recount rather than a revote. And the reason I bring up a revote is I really have no confidence whatsoever in Brenda Snipes. I look at Brenda Snipes as a criminal because she threw out my ballots, and she did it intentionally and willfully. And I wonder what else is she capable of, and I don't know. But you take a look at these irregularities in this past election, where there's reports of that show a breakdown in the chain of custody just in the paper ballots. And I must say, Broward County, not just this election after election under Brenda Snipes, is a shit show. The primary that we just had, they found 5,000 ballots the next day, and then I think another 5,000, and it ended up overturning a judicial election. There's a reason that there's a whistleblower investigation going on against Snipes, because this never ends under her. So the public, I think, has lost a lot of faith and confidence in these elections, even if the corporate media has not. Mm-hmm. And, I think there are an awful lot of candidates who would support invalidating the recent election. Let's see if a court will. So I'm talking to folks about it. I'd like to see Pam Bondi take the lead on it. Mm-hmm. Pam Bondi, she grandstanded. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh and call it grandstanding. I don't know her personally, but she made a statement a day ago, I think, calling for the Department of Law Enforcement. And I think not just a statement, I think she directed them to intensify their investigation of Snipes. And my open letter was, I applaud you for investigating. There should be investigations. But there already was one. I conducted an investigation through civil litigation and the discovery process, and our investigation uncovered criminal wrongdoing that was established in both a videotape deposition and by a court granting summary judgment. The evidence is there, Ms. Bondi. You don't have to wait. You can charge Brenda Snipes with crimes today. And that would be the first step towards moving towards invalidating these elections and trying to hold them transparently. Right. I would love to see a court listen to testimony about people's concerns with the electronic voting machines. And, people can't have it both ways. They can't say that they're afraid that Russia will hack the elections, but then when their candidates win, there's no problem with electronic voting machines. So, I'd like to see a judge invalidate the elections and say, okay, it's time for new elections, and let's do it with paper ballots that are counted by hand in public.
And that's a good segue, because I wanted to ask you about the bigger picture here. We've been hearing a hysteria, I think, for profit motives. You and I have talked about this before, that, the Russian boogeyman is coming to kidnap our democracy here. I mean, something that hasn't been covered is Rick Scott as governor. He didn't purge as many voters as Brian Kemp in Georgia, but purged a lot of voters in Florida in the build-up to his run for senator. You have Brian Kemp. I mean, I've never seen anything like it other than the Supreme Court basically deciding the 2000 election. Brian Kemp purging, I believe the numbers, at 350,000 voters in Georgia. And then, while he's running, you have Brenda Snipes in South Florida in your race. Literally, it's not a question of opinion. To the letter of the law, she broke it, and nothing has happened to her. Nationally, people would say, who's Brenda Snipes and who cares? But the bottom line is, are you, in your experience and looking at everything that's gone on, because it's happening, I mean, you have stuff that's gone on in Arizona too with fraud. How do we even start talking about 2020? The media is just going to fixate on the horse race and who's up and who's down, but how do you even know you have a fair shot if you're running on a local level or on the national level?
Well, look, you're talking to somebody who's run twice, and it's not like I need this. I'm not a professional politician. Quite the opposite. I've spent my life savings doing this. I'm a tenured law professor. I've got a very good job that I enjoy, that's very satisfying. I don't need this. So, if people are saying, oh, it's sour grapes, no, it's not. It's a scholar who's been writing for decades about the American political system and the economic system, and writing about it as rigged for the elites. And my experience of the last 3 years getting involved in electoral politics only confirms those conclusions. This country has a serious democratic deficit. For a country that loves to talk about, American exceptionalism and what a great democracy we are, in all the international rankings of democracies, we're among the least transparent and have the least integrity of democracies. Money rules. It rules in campaign finance. And, the electronic voting machine, vending machine industry is a powerful industry with a lot of clout. And these elections, they're not transparent and they're not verifiable. So there needs to be reform. And, how do you get there? How do you get reform if the electoral process itself is skewed against you? If civil litigation doesn't bear fruit, like, here I went all out, brought a civil lawsuit against the supervisor, won it. It took me years, took a lot of my own money. Criminal prosecution, the criminal law enforcement agencies could not have been bothered by Snipes' law breakings. And what's left? Nonviolent civil disobedience, I suppose. But that didn't work out well under President Obama with Occupy Wall Street getting swept off the streets without really achieving much except maybe an awakening of consciousness. So this country has some serious problems. And those are political problems. Those are problems related to the type of democracy we have. We haven't even gotten into, income inequality, racism, the criminal justice system, climate change, environmental degradation, all of that, that puts, our quality of life and future generations at risk. But we're not going to solve any of those problems if we don't have a democratic process that allows the people to have some say in how they're governed.
Mm-hmm. And my last question, and I'm sorry to be a Debbie Downer here. I mean, there's real consequences here, not just for democracy, but for Broward County and South Florida. Now that the Democratic Party, the establishment wing, is taking control, Nancy Pelosi, reason would think that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is going to be yanked out of witness protection. And, her and Nancy Pelosi and her in leadership, from what I can see, she's not going to be a backbencher anymore. They're going to bring her back to the forefront. And do you see threats now that the establishment Democrats are obviously there's been progressive victories, but bottom line is it looks like Pelosi will be Speaker. It looks like, the neoliberal wing is moving back into leadership there. What's at stake here now that it seems Wasserman Schultz will have more power?
Well, Wasserman Schultz is just emblematic of the party. If I had beaten Wasserman Schultz, it wouldn't have changed the power dynamics within the party. It's a party that's corporate owned. You can point to a number of really good notable exceptions out of 435. Well, however many Democrats are in the House, 200 something. You can point to some notable exceptions of Democratic members of Congress who are still pretty much out there fighting for the progressive agenda. But the center of gravity, the center of power in that party is certainly with the corporate-dominated, corporate-owned Democrats. And I don't see that changing. I think they needed to crush my campaign because I was running as an independent, and it would have been a big shot in the arm for independent candidates at a time when independent voters make up 46% of the electorate. People are rejecting both these parties. We know they're not working for us. Publicly, they're at each other's throats all the time, and yet behind the scenes, they cover up each other's mess. They wash each other's dirty laundry. The ballot destruction case here is one prime example of it.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, I lied. There's the biggest consequence I see here. Obviously, Debbie Wasserman Schultz isn't running the states, but climate change, I mean, you read some experts that say Florida could be in big trouble as soon as a decade as far as endless flooding, property destruction, and worse. And she's not going up against fracking. She's not going up against oil companies, energy companies. She's, as you've said,
and big agriculture.
Right.
It's a big part of the climate change problem, and not just climate change. It's now become an enormous threat to our water supply here in Florida. It's destroyed a lot of sea life in the past few months. Wasserman Schultz is a corporate-dominated Democrat. She will she'll talk the talk of progressive politics now and then. She'll talk about climate change being a reality. That's how far she's gone. It's a reality. I guess when you have a governor like Scott who says it's not even a reality, calling it reality sounds like you're doing something about it, but you're not. So, what I've been saying is on the Republican side, you've got climate change deniers. On the Democratic side, you've got climate change hypocrisy, where they'll talk about climate change like it's a very real problem, but they don't do anything about it. Wasserman Schultz on the Appropriations Committee continues to vote for hundreds of millions of dollars a year in subsidies for big sugar and even bigger subsidies for big agribusinesses and fossil fuels as well. So it's a bleak picture. I don't know what's in store for not just our country, but the future of our planet. And it just seems like we're living in a time where people have forgotten their common sense of humanity. Money rules. People have the feeling that we're living in a corrupt time. I can't change it, so I might as well just go along to get along. And, if that's everyone's view, it doesn't change anything.
Right. And I promise this is the last one. Have you made any decisions as far as whether you'll file lawsuits, if you're going to be starting a legal fund? We have, 250 people watching now. I'm sure more will be watching after.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts moving forward?
We've made no decision right now. We're looking at the prospects of seeking a recount, what it would entail.
A recount or a revote?
We're looking at the prospects of both, I should say.
Okay.
Of both, a recount and a revote by bringing a suit to invalidate the elections.
Okay.
And I don't know what I wouldn't venture to guess what we will decide to do, but we're looking at both. I'll say there are folks like Bernie Sanders, who after the 2016 election, he really hasn't spoken out about the kind of election corruption that stopped his campaign. Instead, he has kind of repeated the talking points about Russia, if anything. And, I don't know if it's a third rail that we're not supposed to talk about, but we need to. It's unacceptable to have an election system like we do. Right.
I appreciate you taking the time, Tim. I mean, the comments are very, very overwhelmingly positive, and people are very appreciative that you stuck to your guns, no pun intended. And I know we'll keep in touch as you make decisions.
Well, I thank you for having me on, and I appreciate your audience and this grassroots movement. And I look forward to staying in touch with you.
All right. Take care, Tim.
Okay, Lauren. Thank you, Jordan. Take care.
There you have it. That was Tim Canova. Sorry if it was a little bumpy there. Before I get into what Tim Canova had to say, because I thought there were a lot of interesting things there, don't you think it's interesting that when I put in a headline, by the way, I'm on Ethernet, and I just upgraded my internet plan. So I shouldn't have any buffering going on this stream. I got an upgraded internet plan. I'm on Ethernet. Shouldn't be any problem. Isn't it interesting that all of a sudden I have Tim Canova on and the channel's just buffering like crazy? In and out. Nobody could hear. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like YouTube has a switch and somebody's operating it. Just saying. Anyway, that was Tim Canova. Obviously, if you came a little late, Tim Canova lost in 2016 to Debbie Wasserman Schultz by 12 points. Pretty, not a small margin, but not 25 points. And in that race, it was proven through Tim Canova's lawsuit against the Broward County that the supervisor of elections literally threw out the paper ballots. Which is illegal. You can't destroy ballots in any election that way. So we don't know in 2016 if he won or lost. We don't know how much he actually lost by. We don't know if he actually won in 2016. Thank you, Jay, for the $14.99 in the super chat. Keep the super chat coming and keep the GoFundMe coming. We're almost at 20,000 in the GoFundMe. Thank you to everybody contributing. We don't know. But in this specific issue, and I'm going to get grief from some quarters for having him on, and Jordan, you're a conspiracy theorist. There's no proof that anything untoward happened. You know what? No, there's not proof, but does it make sense to you that somebody gets, I think last election, he got 43% of the vote. Jen or Sam, check what the results were in 2016. the primary versus Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Tim Canova. I believe he got 43% of the vote. How do you go from 43% of the vote down to, I think, 4.9% of the vote? That kind of drop isn't because he went from a Democrat to an independent. If anything, he was not a brand new figure anymore this time around. He was he had name recognition. He ran in 2016. He did a lot more canvassing between 2016 and 2018. Met a lot more people. Thank you, Sam. He got 43.2% of the vote in 2016. How do you go from 43.2% of the vote down to 4.9% of the vote? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. I don't have to have proof sitting here right now to know that smells fishy. Oh, thank you, Jen. I thought it was Sam because some comments were Sam, and now they're you. Thanks, Jen. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist. There's no proof at this moment, but you know what? There is proof. Every county, so Broward County, every one of them has a supervisor of elections. Well, that supervisor of elections broke the law in 2016. She threw out the paper ballots. The only way for you to actually do a recount, make sure there wasn't any election fraud, is to count the ballots. Well, she threw them out. He won civilly. She broke the law criminally. But as we always talk about, and Ty just did a live stream earlier, there's two legal systems in this country, one for the powerful and one for us. Actually, there's three. One for the powerful, one for people like me, semi-privileged white dudes, and one for black people and brown people and Native Americans. So it doesn't make sense. You don't go from 43% of the vote in 2016 to 4.9% of the vote. And no, him switching from Democrat to independent does not make that big of a drop. Frankly, if anything, he might, could it have been that he went down from 43% to 20%? Possibly. But 43 to 4.9? Jen, could you check what the results were this time? I think he had 4.9%. No. You cannot tell me that's valid. Especially, why was this supervisor of election who broke the law overseeing this election? Tell me that. How is somebody who broke the law, who's supposed to be neutral and threw out the ballots, basically election ballot destruction? That's not dramatized. That's what happened. Why is she still involved? Why does she still have a job? Why is she not in jail? 5%. Thank you, Jen. And by the way, there were pictures of Brenda Snipes, who Tim kept talking about, literally with her arm around Debbie Wasserman Schultz the last week of October, a week before the election. Are you kidding me? I think there was election fraud in this race. I wish I had the funding to go down there and investigate it. Unfortunately, I don't. That's why we're doing the GoFundMe in the first place. I think a lot of you think we're just hawking you for the hell of it. No, we're hawking you because we want to get out there and investigate these things. We have 294 people that have contributed to the GoFundMe. We are trying, desperately to get to our goal. Our goal is 50,000 overall, but we're obviously within a major goal. You have to set mini goals. So our goal for November is to hit $25,000. Still got plenty of time to do that. So we're at 294, and I promise you, the more money we raise, the more I'm able to investigate things. Honestly, Jen could tell you, because she's in the chat, one of the things we're trying to raise money for is to hire some additional people. Jen's doing the job of 25 people. I'm doing the job of many people. Ty's doing the job of several people. We would like to get research help. We can break stories. We can expose what's going on with Tim Canova and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and what happened there. But you can't do those things without resources. So thank you to everyone who's been contributing. Keep it coming, either in the Super Chat or in the GoFundMe. Thank you, Susie. $2 in the Super Chat. And, of course, I had Tim on. I told you guys I was trying to get him all weekend, but busy guy. No representation says, how can you investigate stuff, Jordan, when the networks can't? If you haven't noticed, I'm not the networks. But Status Quo is a network of independent, grassroots, guerrilla journalism. And the networks, they're not networks. They're public relations people pretending to be journalists. Come on, man. They're public relations people pretending to be journalists. Networks. I mean, you could watch the video I did, literally when a Politico reporter was on with MSNBC talking about that this election official had destroyed the paper ballots but stayed on as supervisor of elections. The MSNBC anchor It was like she just learned Santa wasn't real. She was like, "What? That's weird that happened." None of these people in the media, the basic premise of journalism, if you're an actual journalist, is the government is lying. You start from that basic proposition. Government's lying. That's what I start with. And then you work your way back. In rare cases, you find out, oh, okay, they're not lying. In most cases, they are. Or half telling a half-truth. But no, this supervisor of elections destroyed the paper ballots, broke the law, and nothing happened. And by the way, it's not like this election between Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Tim Canova. Think back to 2016. It wasn't that long ago. Tim Canova was the highest profile candidate on a state level. It was Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket. Tim Canova was the highest profile progressive in the country running on a state level. He was getting millions of dollars in small dollar donations from out of Florida. Tim Canova versus Debbie Wasserman Schultz might as well have been a national election in 2016. Thank you, Triana Be Fine, $5. Okay, you're worth way more, but here you go. Well, whatever you could do, I thank you. Laura Powers, thanks to the $20 in the super chat. Keep it coming, folks. So this was not a small election. And right there in 2016, there was election fraud. Nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. Just like 200,000 voters were purged off the rolls in New York City in 2016, which, everything I could tell, helped Hillary Clinton. Nothing happened. In Georgia, Brian Kemp purged hundreds of thousands of voters off the rolls. Nothing's happening. How do you want to sit here and rant about Robert Mueller's investigation till we're blue in the face? About Russian trolls and the Russian boogeyman? We don't have free and fair elections because domestic sources are hacking elections. Domestic sources are rigging elections. Domestic sources are breaking election laws. Russia is the least of my concern. Hold on, I got to do my Marco Rubio. Very parched today. And press the share button. Let's get this out. I mean, God, you got Russia and China and Israel. Sitting United States politicians are tossing illegally hundreds, actually millions, because Rick Scott purged a lot of voters in Florida too. Let me tell you something. Look at Georgia. Stacey Abrams is down by a little over a point. Stacey Abrams would have won by 5 to 7 points if 340,000 Georgians weren't purged, majority of which were African American. We'd be sitting here talking about history, the first African American governor of Georgia, and the first woman. Was there a female governor of Georgia? I don't know, but definitely the first African American governor of Georgia. I mean, there's been purges everywhere. Greg Palast has done some amazing reporting. I don't know if he has a beef with me or something, because I've direct messaged him like 100 times to try and interview him and prop up his reporting. But Greg Palast has exposed all of this election purging and fraud all over the country. Like, there's a crisis around this country, and it's not coming from Donald. I mean, yeah, Trump is a problem too, don't get me wrong. But it's from Democratic governors doing this, Democratic election officials, Republican governors. Our politicians are rigging the elections for themselves. And if they're not directly rigging it, their allies, like Brenda Snipes, who is an ally of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, is rigging it. Kennett, 21,907 votes for Tim Canova in the 2016 primary, 12,116 votes for him in 2018 election. I'm sorry, I don't buy that kind of drop. 21,000 down to 12,000. Now, you want to say he ran as a Democrat, so he got 21,907? All right, maybe as an independent he would lose. Maybe he would go down to 18,000? But I don't buy that. Not at all. So, that's what I think. But we'll keep up. We'll keep up with it. We will give you updates. If we get the funding we need, we might go down there because there's other things I want to cover in Florida anyway. Thank you, Anelis Eklund. Annalise Eklund, $100 in the GoFundMe. You are getting us oh so much closer to our goal. You are getting, Annalise, for that $100, either a Status Coup hat. Look at that badass hat. Or a Status Coup shirt, which I didn't have time to upload the photo of the shirt, but trust me, that shirt is pretty. You're getting a Status Coup hat or a Status Coup shirt. And 127 gets you both. To those of you who want 127, let's see where we're at now. We're at 19,000. Oh, it didn't upload yet. We're at 19,852 with her $100 contribution. So thank you very much. And just so you know, and Jen can tell you in the super chat, we're not messing around, folks. We are currently looking for sponsorship deals with progressive sponsors. We are currently looking for different streams of funding. We want to get out in the field. We're dying to cover things that no one else is covering. Frankly, it costs money. It just does. So thank you to everyone who's super chatting and GoFundMeing and all those things. So we appreciate it. So any questions, comments, concerns about the Tim Canova interview? Let me know in the super chat before I move on. What will be, will be, will be. Okay. Looking. Jordy wants to cry. I hope I didn't do anything, Jordy. I hope it wasn't me. Cheryl, good job. Thank you. And again, Ty will edit that and we'll make it look a little prettier. I got him to. Tim and I spoke right before I went live, so I didn't have time to set up the Skype or anything. How much would you need to investigate down in Florida now? I mean, honestly, for myself and Ty to take a trip, conservatively, generally speaking, it costs about $2,000 between flights, rent a car, food, several days down there to look into things. So that's probably how much we would need, between $2,000 and $3,000 to go down there. Not at all, Jordan. Just seeing about HRC running again. Oh, I heard about this. I don't think Hillary Clinton's definitely running again. I think her former pollster just wants to sound relevant and stay relevant and basically gin people up. But if Hillary Clinton runs again, I might move to Canada because I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. I wasn't even going to talk about that today because I just don't want to talk about Hillary Clinton. It makes me unhappy. It would be good clickbait. It would get me a lot of views, but I didn't want to talk about Hillary Clinton today. So, is the electronic recount only for the governor and Senate, but not Tim's race? That is correct. There is no current recount for Tim Canova versus Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That's what he's calling for. If you go to Tim Canova's Facebook page, he penned an open letter. Actually, I could get it for you right now. Hold on one second. And the world. 1 second. I'll get it. Tim Canova. Tim. So here is what he wrote in the open letter to Pam Bondi. Thank you for directing the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to investigate Brenda Snipes, Broward election supervisor, for fraud and other misconduct. However, you already have all the information you need to charge Brenda Snipes and Dozell Spencer, one of her directors, today with multiple felonies under state law for illegally destroying all the ballots in my 2016 primary against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, destroying evidence, and then lying about it to this court for months. We have compiled sufficient evidence of their guilt, including Snipes' sworn videotape deposition admitting to the ballot destruction and the Florida Circuit Court summary judgment order against Snipes, which found that she violated numerous state criminal statutes, some punishable as felonies with up to 5 years in prison. We did all the heavy lifting and tied this case up for you with a nice pretty bow. I would be glad to once again supply you with all this evidence. This is an open and shut case. Once again, you should be able to bring formal charges against Snipes and Spencer today. We have all known about the criminal conduct of Snipes and Spencer for many months. They are the last people who should have been supervising an election. We urge you to seek in court to invalidate Broward County's recent elections, particularly for county-wide races and races within Broward County, and to ask the court to order a new special election conducted with 100% hand-marked paper ballots that are counted by hand in public by the good citizens of Broward County. Tim Canova. So Tim Canova is calling for a special election in his race. He's calling for a special election for all those races: Gillum versus DeSantis, Nelson versus Governor Rick Scott, and him versus Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and for the ballots to be counted by hand. And I think they should. I mean, when you're looking at the chaos in Broward County, when you're looking, frankly, at election fraud in Broward County that already happened, I think there should be a revote, and I think they need to be counted by hand. The people who won won't want that, but that's what democracy calls for, because you cannot trust this supervisor of election who's already broken the law, and there was no penalty. Jordan, what is a good alternative to electronic voting? Are paper ballots the preferred alternative? Is there some way to do both? Another alternative. I think all ballots should be counted by hand. I've said that for a while. And a lot of voting experts and election integrity people think that. It might take a little longer, but that's okay. So what? If we vote and then, it takes a few days. You're talking about the integrity of your elections. You're talking about who actually won. I also think we have some pretty big internet companies and tech companies in this country. I don't trust a lot of them. But can't they come up with a solution, a digital solution for this? I mean, there's two problems. Number one, you have these ridiculous voting suppression methods, voter ID. A lot of states don't have early voting. A lot of states make you, next you're going to have to take a blood test before you could be allowed to vote. If you're a Native American, they're going to make you go to the moon before you could vote. So there's that problem. But there's also the problem of this is chaos. Every county in Florida has the ballots are designed a different way. There's different rules by different counties. There's different rules by different states. It's total chaos. We need one federal law, there's different candidates, but one federal design for ballots. And we need to count, as of now, we need to count count them by hand. Cheryl, hello. Has the UN been... The UN? You mean the most corrupt bureaucratic organization in America? Have they been contacted? I doubt it. But I wouldn't trust the UN, because that's a whole different story, Cheryl. If I want integrity, if I want to get to the bottom of something, I don't go to the United Nations. Hell no. Oh, thank you, Min Yang, for the $10 in the super chat. Please keep fighting. These are the attack of the very foundation of who we are. Without fair election, there is no democracy. Again, which I could give you more. I guess you meant wish. Thanks for the good work. Hey, folks, those of you who contribute, you don't have to tell me you wish you could give me more. I know if you could give me more. And by the way, it's not me. It's us. Ty was live earlier. Ty is going to start going live more on this channel. Jen is doing some reporting in the background. We are pushing it. This isn't Jordan. This is we. And we would like to raise more money so that we can bring on more people. I'd love to bring on more reporters. Ooh, here we go. Here's the update. 19,852. And there are 179 people watching here. I don't know how many on Twitter, but 179 watching on the YouTube. We need 5 more people. 5 more people to get to 300. I think there's 5 people who haven't contributed yet. I'm not laying the Jewish guilt on you, as my mother would say. I think there's 5 people who haven't contributed that have like $2 to $5 a pop to get to that 300 number before I end today. I think we do. No pressure, but for those of you, sitting in the corner of the room, I'd appreciate it. Jen is putting the links there. And thank you so much to Annalise who contributed. I'm donating because I believe in your mission, she told me. I believe in your mission. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, we're going to make this Super Chat Sunday a thing. We're going to make this Super Chat Sunday a thing. So I was live yesterday. I started at 5 Eastern time on Sunday, and I went live till about 8 o'clock. So we're going to do that. We're going to start doing that every Sunday. I am going away for 8 days in December, so I won't do it that week. But other than that, we're going live every Sunday. And hey, keeping it real, I would love to have Sunday off, but Justice can't sleep, and we need to raise more money for this. We need to raise no money. We need to raise more money for Status Quo. So thank you, No Representation. $2 in the Super Chat. So we're going to be going live Sundays. I'm going to be doing interviews during the week that we release during the live stream Sunday. So I have reached out, by the way. I don't have her email, so I reached out through the website, but I've reached out to Stephanie Kelton. She is a professor at Stony Brook University and one of the leading authorities on modern monetary theory, which is MMT. A lot of folks in the audience have been asking me to cover that, and I'm interested in covering that. So I'm going to try to get an interview with her and some other folks on MMT to play that for you. I'm also trying to get an interview with the chairman of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe in South Dakota, the Keystone XL pipeline, the permit that President Trump granted for the Keystone Pipeline was just reversed and revoked by a judge in Montana. I'm going to try to get the chairman of that tribe, because that was going through South Dakota and Montana and Nebraska. So we're going to try to get him to talk about what this means. I did a report on it last week. It's a temporary victory, but it's not a permanent end to the pipeline. The judge is giving the State Department and, of course, the oil company more time to do more of an environmental impact study. Thank you, Victoria. Just donated $5. You heeded my call. Thank you, Victoria, for the $5 in the GoFundMe. That brings us to 296 people. Exciting. So we're 4 away from 300. I think we could do it. 4 more people. So yeah, and by the way, Jen, could you put in what email we're telling people to send in to these days? If you have ideas for people you'd like me to interview, if you have ideas for stories you'd like to see, Sundays, it's always remains to be seen. Two Sundays ago, I went live for 7.5 hours. Yesterday, I went live for 3 hours. It really depends on how much saliva I have, how much my throat is working, and how much energy I have, and how much energy you have to watch me that long. But we are going to be trying to do as much as possible. So I didn't expect Tim to call in, so this live stream has been going longer than I expected. I want to do a couple more stories. Covert White Rabbit. Thank you, $2 in the Super Chat. Check out Viola Corp role in Flint poisoning. Covert, have you read my reporting on Viola Corp during the Flint water crisis? I've looked into them, and I've reported on them. Go back to my Young Turk. I don't want to send you to the Young Turks, actually. So, Jen, tell them where to email for story ideas. Is it still my email, or is it status quo? Do whatever you can to expose election fraud. Chris Garrett, my wish is your command. My wish is your command. I'll do as much as I can here without traveling. We'd like to travel to cover more of the election stuff if we can, so that's what we're going to do. Another $5. Susan just donated $5. We are now at 19,862 and 297 people. Can we get to 300? Can we get to 300? I have my thing out. I'm waiting to blow it. Just waiting. 3 more people. We could do it. So, thank you to Tim. We'll try to get that up as soon as we can. Michael just donated $20 and posted a comment. You guys are amazing. Keep up the good work, Michael Cooper says. So that brings us to I think that brings us to 298 people. So I thought this story, Jen sent this to me, and at first I was like, ugh, Jen, you are so establishment. Jen is my business partner, journalist with Status Quo. We broke the story in Flint that we're still working on. Just got another 5. I mean, people are amazing. Ask for it, you shall receive it. So now we're at 299 people, I think, have contributed. So Jen sent me a story, an opinion piece by Maureen Dowd. Maureen Dowd is, to me, one of the more establishment opinion columnists in America. I don't particularly like her hot takes, per se. But you got to give credit where credit is due. And on this Veterans Day, thank you to the veterans. I appreciate the veterans service, even though we send them to horrible wars for no reason. Dove, thank you for the $5 in the super chat. Why didn't Tim spend money on exit polls? How much would it have cost? What do you think? He's independently rich? Did you not hear him say he spent most of his life savings on these lawsuits? I could ask him how much exit polls cost, but I'm not thinking they're cheap. I'm not thinking they're cheap down there. So, but I'll ask him. So, it's Veterans Day. I respect the veterans, even though I don't respect the politicians who send them to these wars that we have no business in being in. I don't respect the politicians that are getting these veterans killed. I don't respect that, but I respect the veterans. So Maureen Dowd, who is with the New York Times, actually wrote an amazing opinion piece that I think really says it all. Because I've been saying, and everyone's been saying, wait a minute, do we have an announcement, Jen? Do we have an announcement? I just saw a $50 contribution in GoFundMe. Let's see where we're at here. Ooh. Okay, we're close. We're close to 20,000. We're getting there. Jen, text me what number we're at when you can. So, I've been saying, yeah, Donald Trump is terrible, but could we stop lionizing and creating these extreme makeovers for war criminals like George W. Bush? Can we stop lionizing and making beautiful love to these people that launched this war? CNN has Max Boot on. Max Boot basically said, I don't care. He was an opinion columnist and a Republican, and he said, I don't care if Saddam Hussein had anything to do with it. We're going to war with Iraq. Can we stop, rehabilitating Bill Kristol and making these people the darlings of liberal democracy? Edward Klein, Bush should be hanged for war crimes. I don't know if I want to hang him, but I do think he should be in prison. That's for sure. Wait a minute. Sorry. I think I have an announcement to make. Why isn't GoFundMe reloading? All right. We have reached 300 people. 300 people have contributed to the GoFundMe, so it is time. With that, I play the promo video. If those of you who have seen it, I'm sorry, but we got to play it one more time. Here we go.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We're in tonight with the president not saying something, not tweeting, not punching back. Nothing at all about Stormy Daniels.
I don't like that people like when I'm with you more than when I'm not.
Lock us up at the gates of hell and we won't back down. We will stand our ground.
Our kids breaking out in blisters.
Lock us up at the gates of hell and we won't back down. We will stand our ground. The
government and the media would rather focus on the president's tweets, scary boogeymen from Russia, instead of people being poisoned.
We were driving up and we started seeing the lines to this church here. A lot of the churches in Flint are distribution centers for free bottled water.
It's sad to see that 4 years later, we're still going through the same thing as if it happened 3 months ago.
They said, oh, your water's totally clear for lead, it's fine. There's no way for them to know that.
I really do believe that this water, from us consuming all of this stuff, that is what caused my miscarriages.
I'm all broke out. I have picked my own pictures. I'm all broke out. I'm diabetic. I have like webs. And this is from the water.
You killed his body, then you killed his name. Why are you here if you have no answer?
Eric Cherry was killed on the streets of Chicago at 16 years old. That's my grandson.
We saw 24-year-old Maurice Granton shot in the back while running for police.
Right now, there is a hunt, and black boys are the prey.
When it was communities who are mostly wealthy, mostly white, it's like the pain is felt. But with something about our communities where I see our youth having to fight, literally needing support to get the rest of the world to understand that the everyday shootings they have to see and go right back to school after their friend was killed is just as painful. Like literally having to convince society that we can't take more pain, that we can't take this no more.
Polluting the water Since when is profit more important than water? When is profit more important than people?
Hey, it's Jordan. I'm here in Flint, Michigan. I am here on Lakeshore Drive here in Chicago. I am here live in Dallas, beautiful Virginia. Hey, it's Jordan. I'm live in Arlington, Texas. Look at this destruction. You're not going to see this anywhere. You think CNN's coming up here? Please. Yeah, if you could prove Putin cut down the trees, they'll be here in a jiffy.
Status coup. Is now it's going to be called? Is it going to be statuscoup.com?
Yes. Most people are not lacking compassion. Most people do not know what the fuck is going on. And now we are $58 away from $20,000. Hey, not bad for a small grassroots GoFundMe to raise $20,000 in 2 months from 300 people. I am super proud. So we haven't yet. So if anybody feeling good today wants to drop $58 to get us there, that would be amazing. But thank you. I'm so happy we're over 300 now and onward. I want to get to over 1,000 if we can, or 1,000 to 2,000, but on the road to 50,000. And this money is money we need, and we are showing you. We're not telling you what we're going to do. We're showing you what we're going to do. We've been to Dallas with this. We've been to Flint with this. We have also bought equipment with this, and we are going to be using the money. Jen could explain it much better than I. We need a lot of help as far as marketing, research, and trying to get our content out. We have been, as you could see from the live stream today, if you've been there the whole time, we have been really, really suppressed by YouTube and other social platforms. So we are coming up with creative ways to get around that. Unfortunately, they require us to have resources and money. So thank you to everybody contributing. We'd love to get to 20,000 by the end of this, so keep it coming if you can. Now, and of course, thanks to the people in the super chat too. If it's easier, you could contribute there. So, on this Veterans Day, before I read the Maureen Dowd column, the media is getting ready with their puckered lips to, run Joe Biden. They want Joe Biden to be the Democratic candidate. Well, look what Joe Biden's doing these days. You really can't make this up. Joe Biden last night, quote, "We share a belief that those democratic values are precious. They exist above party, and they have to be defended." Vice President Joe Biden, while honoring and awarding President George W. Bush with this year's Liberty Medal. No, this isn't The Onion, folks. George W. Bush was awarded a Liberty Medal by Joe Biden. Quote, "We share a belief that these democratic values are precious. They exist above party, and they have to be defended." Vice President Joe Biden. And this is who we want to run against Donald Trump? This is who we want to take back the Rust Belt from Trump? You can have two things being true. George W. Bush is a war criminal who should be in jail, and Donald Trump is a menace to society, has fascist tendencies, is a dictator, is on his way to being a dictator. But it seems that the media and people like Joe Biden have basically erased history to kind of make the present more catastrophic. So we have to make Donald Trump seem like Hitler. We have to make Donald Trump a buffoon who doesn't know his head from his ass. We have to make him to be the Antichrist. So we need to soften and, kind of fertilize a little bit. Take the taint off. People, George W. Bush's decision in Iraq has killed over 100,000 killed or injured over 100,000 people. DID, thanks for the $4.99. And no representation. Thank you for that comment. I'm not going to say it, but I appreciate it. Oh, God. Truth hurts, doesn't it? No representation? Anyway, it's unbelievable. It is absolutely unbelievable that George W. Bush is allowed to go out in public. He was just at the Philadelphia Eagles football game last night, and he was brought out during the national anthem to talk to praise veterans. The very man that killed these veterans for nothing, for no reason other than for Dick Cheney and his buddies at Halliburton to make billions of dollars. And Joe Biden's giving this man a Liberty Medal? Is it just me? Anybody else see a problem with this? You can't make it up. Can't make it up. Johnny Nice, 2020 is going to see record censorship and alternative media suppression. It's going to be a free speech bloodbath, not on our watch. That's why we are growing, and that's why we have created statuscoup.com. We're going to be doing a lot more on our website, so definitely go to the website now. Enter your email so you could join our email list. Where our plan is not exclusively to be on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So we got a lot of plans. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people. It's just Jen, myself, and Ty. So ambition only takes you so far. You do need resources. So, Edward Klein, neoliberalism has caused all of this. Couldn't agree more. You don't have extreme conservatism without neoliberals propping it up. That's the problem. Extreme conservatism can be defeated if you actually have a real opposition party that stands for something and actually gives the people what they want. The country overwhelmingly supports progressive policies. The problem is we have neoliberals cock-blocking those progressive policies. Excuse my French. So I want to read this story. I never thought I'd say these words from Maureen Dowd, who I think is pretty establishment. But in this case, I really like this story. So she has an image, who's the real American Psycho? And she has an image of Dick Cheney, played by Christian Bale, which is, I think that movie is coming up in December. Christian Bale plays Dick Cheney in Vice. Donald Trump is running wild and running scared. Again, this is Maureen Dowd with the New York Times. He's such a menace that it's tempting to cheer any vituperative critic, never heard that word, vituperative critic, and grab any handy truncheon. But villainizing Trump should not entail sanitizing other malefactors. And we should acknowledge that the president is right on one point. For neocons, journalists, authors, political hacks, and pundits, there is a financial incentive to demonize the president, not to mention an instant halo effect. Only Trump could get the pussy hat crowd to Times Square to protest Jeff Sessions' firing. That's so true. Can you imagine how bad and how rock bottom we have gotten that people are sitting there defending Jeff Sessions as attorney generals? Jeff Sessions literally could, if you didn't know who he was and you just listened to his voice and some of the things he said, sounds like a man in the KKK. But we hate Trump so much that we're going to go protest because Jeff Sessions has been removed. I don't agree that Trump is putting in one of his boys in there to basically stop the Mueller investigation and water it down. I don't agree with that. But let's pretend that Jeff Sessions is so great. Ugh. So, we make the president the devil spawn and he makes us the enemy of the people and everybody wins. Or do they? To what extent is lucrative Trump hysteria warping our discourse? Well, I've been saying this for many years, but yes. Trump may not be sweaty and swarthy, but he makes a good bad guy. As with Nixon and Watergate, the correct moral response and the lavish ruminative rewards neatly dovetail. Even for Washington, the capital of do-overs and the soulless swamp, where horrendous mistakes never prevent you from cashing in and getting another security clearance, this is a repellent spectacle. War criminals turned liberal heroes are festooned with book and TV contracts, podcasts, and op-ed perches. Those who sold us the cakewalk Iraq War and the outrageously unprepared Sarah Palin and torture as enhanced interrogation. Those who left the Middle East shattered with a cascading refugee crisis and a rising ISIS. And those who midwifed the birth of the Tea Party are washing away their sins in a basin of Trump hate. The very same Republicans who eroded America's moral authority in the 2000s are staggeringly being treated as the new guardians of moral authority. They bellow that Trump is a blight on democracy. But where were these patriots when the Bush administration was deceiving us with a cooked-up war in Iraq? Michelle Obama has written in her memoir that she will never forgive Trump for pushing the birther movement. Yet the Pygmalions of Palin, who backed Trump on their birther filth, are now amongst the most celebrated voices in Michelle's party. The architects and enablers of the Iraq War and Abu Ghraib are still being listened to on foreign policy, both inside the administration, John Bolton and Gina Haspel, and out. Never Trumper Elliot Cohen wrote the Washington Post op-ed after the election telling conservatives not to work for Trump. Max Boot, who urged an invasion of Iraq whether or not Saddam was involved in 9/11, is now a CNN analyst, Post columnist, and the author of a new book bashing Trump. John Yoo, who wrote the unconstitutional torture memo, is suddenly concerned that Trump's appointment of his ghastly acting attorney general is unconstitutional. I mean, she left out Bill Kristol, David Frum being lionized as leaders and liberal champions of the resistance, but whatever. We'll take what we can get. MSNBC is awash in nostalgia for Ronald Reagan and W. So it's a good moment for Adam McKay, the inventive director of The Big Short, to enter the debate with a movie that raises the question, is insidious destruction of our democracy by a bureaucratic samurai with the soothing voice of a boys' school headmaster even more dangerous than a self-destructive buffoon ripping up our values in plain sight? What she's referring to there is Cheney more dangerous or someone like Trump? How do you like your norms broken? Over Twitter or in a torture memo? By a tin pot demagogue stomping on checks and balances he can't even fathom? Or a shadowy authoritarian expertly and quietly dismantling checks and balances he knows are sacred? McKay grappled with the W. Cheney debacle in 2009 when he co-wrote a black comedy with Will Ferrell called You're Welcome, America, A Final Night with George Bush. That was absolutely hysterical. In the Broadway hit, Ferrell's W dismissed waterboarding as a bliss spot treatment and confided that he had once discovered Cheney locked in an embrace with a giant goat devil in a room full of pentagrams. When McKay was home with the flu 3 years ago, he grabbed a book and began reading up on Cheney. He ended up writing and directing Vice, a film that uses real-life imagery, witty cinematic asides, and cultural touchstones to explore the irreparable damage Cheney did to the planet, and how his blunders and plunders led to many of our current crises. With an echo of his Batman growl, Christian Bale brilliantly shapeshifts into another American psycho, the lumbering, scheming vice president who easily manipulates the naive and insecure W, deliciously played by Sam Rockwell. While W strives to impress his father, Cheney strives to impress his wife, Lynn, commandingly played by Amy Adams. Before we had Trump's swarm of blood-sucking lobbyists gutting government regulations from within, we had Cheney's. Before Trump brazenly used the White House to boost his brand, we had Cheney wallowing in emoluments. He let his energy industry pals shape energy policy. He pushed to invade Iraq, giving no-bid contracts to his former employer, Halliburton, and helping his big oil cronies reap the spoils in Iraq. The movie opens at Christmas, but it's no sugary Hallmark fable. It's a harrowing cautionary tale showing that democracy could be sabotaged even more diabolically by a trusted insider respected by most of the press than by a clownish outsider disdained by most of the press. After screening Vice, I asked McKay which of our two right-wing dementors was worse, Cheney or Trump. Here's the question, he said. Would you rather have a professional assassin after you or a frothing maniac with a meat cleaver? I'd rather have a maniac with a meat cleaver after me, so I think Cheney is way worse. And also, if you look at the body count, more than 600,000 people died in Iraq. Not even close, right? That is Maureen Dowd. I thought it was a great piece. I thought it was pretty important to show you that on Veterans Day, on top of Joe Biden giving Liberty Awards to George W. Bush, which is, I mean, what do you say? What do you say? You can think Trump is dangerous. You could think Trump's gutting of regulations is terrible. You could think Trump's Islamophobia, misogyny, gross conspiracy theories he puts out there, attack on electoral norms. You could think all of this is dangerous. But it's an insult to people, A, who died. It's an insult to the living victims which are the families of these soldiers in Iraq. And it's an insult to historical accuracy to pretend that these people, like Cheney and Bush and Bill Kristol and David Frum and Max Boot and Elliot Engel, and I could go on and on and on, are like just, part of the conversation now. Just normal. These people, when you normalize people like this, you normalize fake wars, actually a real war based on fake intelligence, and you normalize crimes. Torturing is a crime. The doctoring of intelligence and evidence, crimes. Frankly, he stole the election too. These are all crimes. And these people should not be lionized. They should not be out in public at football games. They should not be out accepting awards from progressives like Joe Biden. And by the way, they're also responsible for ISIS. ISIS was created from the vacuum of Iraq. And the people that have died from ISIS, thank George W. Bush for that too. So remember this, when the media props up Joe Biden and, will Biden run? Will he not? I think he is going to run, unfortunately. Remember who he thinks we should be bipartisan with. Who he thinks, let's push away the ideology and let's recognize these great Americans who launched us into catastrophic wars based on bullshit. Who stand there next to veterans pretending they care when they didn't care when they were sending those veterans into war based on no evidence, based on no intelligence, based on trying to basically finish what his father started. Poppy push in the first Gulf War. History is doomed to repeat itself if history itself is changed. If history itself is redacted, if history itself is altered, if the real villains are made into heroes. It's doomed to repeat itself if all that happens. Victoria says, has somebody donated $50 yet? No. No one has. We are still at 19,942. I would sleep a lot better. I'd sleep a lot better if we got to 20,000. But I can't make you do it. You either believe or you don't. So if there's a lucky guy, if there's a loyal guy or gal or whatever out there who wants to contribute that $58 or a couple to get us to that 20,000, then Jen and I could sleep well and start anew tomorrow. We're trying to raise 25,000 by the end of December. It's a very, very large goal. Our overall goal is 50,000. You see what we stand for. You see what kind of stories we cover. You see what kind of investigations we can pull off. We just broke a major story in Flint, and we were able to do that reporting based off of your contributions. And that story, I can't get into details, but that story right now is in the hands of some very powerful people that might be taking action. And if you don't know about that story, Jen and I broke the story 2 weeks ago that the state of Michigan illegally tested dozens of homes in Flint, flushing their water lines before taking samples, which completely cooks the data, because when you flush water lines, you're basically flushing lead and giving time for the lead to be flushed out of the system. And then, let's put the sample bottle in when we've already flushed the lead out. Voila, you get lower lead levels. And then the state of Michigan, with those lower lead levels, declared Flint's water safe. That is what happened. So definitely go read that story if you haven't. Definitely share that story, because from what we have found, it is not accurate to say the water is restored or safe in Flint. And that's why we keep staying on Flint, because Flint is a microcosm on all cities in America. There are a lot of cities with water problems. I try to cover as many as I can. But if what happened in Flint is allowed to be covered up, this is what they're going to do in every other community. If water agencies on the state level are allowed to basically cook data and cheat on the testing, trust me, that's what they're doing in other places too. So, before I go, any questions, comments, concerns? Again, if you didn't notice, Ty was live earlier in the day. We're going to have him going live about 3 times a week now. probably around 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 11 o'clock Pacific. So set that in for your reminder. Ty will be live at 2 o'clock Eastern. I'm live every day, 5 o'clock Eastern. And we are definitely working on some things in the background, Jen and I, to get this business booming and to get back in the field. Jennifer, they don't care about these people because they are black and poor. You think this would happen in the Hamptons? I've been saying that for 3 years. You're absolutely right. Sandra Mayer, $2 in the super chat, 27 dot. I don't know what that means, but thank you. Liam, $60 in the super chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Technically, we got to the GoFundMe fundraiser. It's in the super chat, not the GoFundMe, but money's money. Thank you, Liam, for getting us there. Can't thank you enough. So we will say, even though it's not going to show up on the GoFundMe page because it was technically in the super chat, we can now say we're at $20,000. So I think that's fair, Jen. Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Liam. And if another person wants to contribute in the GoFundMe so we could actually get the official number up, we'll take that too. But thank you, Liam, for getting us there. Thank you to everybody who's contributed. We are now at 301 people that have contributed in the GoFundMe. You can keep them coming after. And go look at the GoFundMe page. Look at the stories we're interested in covering. Look at the promo video. Look at what we're about. I know everyone has a tight budget. Try and add us in if you can, even if it's temporary. Because real reporting costs real resources, and I'd rather grovel to you than grovel to special interests, corporate media companies, and special interest corporate assholes. Not doing that. Not doing it. I refuse. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. And remember, most people are not lacking compassion. Most people have no earthly fucking clue what the hell is going on. Peace out.